Okay, today what we're going to be doing is cutting the rail post to support the railing for the side of our stairs. So in the spirit of measure twice, cut once, or the fun opposite of measure once, cut twice, what we're going to start by doing is we did a little bit of calculation using our good friend geometry from back in school to figure out what is the difference in height for the top edge of the rail post versus the bottom edge. So we're going to have to mark off an angle to get our measurement that came to 25/32 of an inch, and that will go to the corner edge of our post. So what we're going to do is line up and just draw ourselves a little bit of a guideline there using our square. And then we're going to use a little attachment for the table saw, which is called a miter guide. And what a miter guide does is, a miter is when you're working to cut at a certain angle. You can either do that with some saws being able to shift the blade side to side depending on the cut you're trying to do, or if you're guiding a larger piece, you can use this attachment, and what it'll do is give us a little bit of a degree angle here on the dial, so that when we line up our board here, we can determine our angle cut off of this guide, which allows us to run through this direction. So our measure twice is, once we've set our angle that matched up to the calculations that we did, we can check our guideline and see if, when we're held against our miter guide, whether our line lines up with the saw blade. In this case, our angle looks really good. So that is actually our measure twice in this case. And then of course, any small adjustments that we need to make when we're doing our install, we can handle by sanding. So since our measurement by going by inch of depth to the angle matches up with our miter dial here, our miter guide, to match up to the angle that we predicted we would need, we now know we're good to make our cuts. And what this also does is it allows us two things. Not only is it our second check on our measurement and our positioning, but by using this guide, we'll be able to keep angle consistency between all of our posts, which will allow us to make sure when we're installing the railing, it should line up quite well top to bottom as it's going along this guide. So we're going to go ahead and remove some of the extra debris, get our safety equipment in check, and we will begin cutting here in a moment. So we're going to grab our safety gloves, got our glasses, and we've got our ear protection. Okay, all of our safety checks complete. Clear the last little bit of debris, and we are ready to begin cutting. Okay, one thing also to note on this one is some of the safety equipment that we have isn't going to be able to be used because of how narrow we are to our guide bar here. So we're going to have to be extra careful and be ready for little fragments to come up off of the saw. Okay, a piece got ledged, so wait till the saw completely comes to a stop, unplug, then you can remove your piece, and then plug back in and continue. And while there's that little bit of extra time to take the extra step to unplug, it's a lot shorter than a trip to the emergency room. All right, so now we've got a number of these cut, and you can see that we're going to keep a pretty nice and consistent angle with all of these cuts. So as these posts spread out, the height will get adjusted to line up with the pole, and we'll have our railings. All right, so next we'll be working at getting the end posts completed. So we'll come back at a later time. All right, so right now what I'm getting ready to do is to cut our end posts. So the height of the posts is going to be the challenging part to get them all correct. However, what we're going to be focusing on is setting the posts, which are going to be freestanding at the location where these stairs are. So we're using a much thicker board, and this is going to serve as the end point to insert the rail. Now what we're going to do is, the plan is to essentially drill a hole at an angle at the edge of the board so that we can insert the railing and then fix it with some screws. And then we fix that then to the top of the stairs where we connect it to the wall. And then all of our railing spindles, which add incremental support for each additional one we add. We just need to butt it up to the edge of the railing, screw them in to the staircase as well as to the railing to set these. So right now what we're looking at is your standard railing will be 40 inches tall. So that's going to be from 40 inches is where you're looking to measure from the platform where you'll be standing. So the first stairs sit 7 inches up. So we have to do 47 inches, which is where the railing will start. And then it'll move up at an angle that we've measured, which matches up to our 27 degrees. So with that, we're measuring at 51 inches to give ourselves a little bit of leeway as we do the next step of the drilling, just so we have a little bit of room for give. If you go too close to the edge of a board, it can become a little bit more fragile, so we want to avoid that. But once we get our hole drilled in place for our railing, we can decide whether we want to add a top or whether we want to just take a second cut and make it more flush with the angle of the railing itself. So to be determined. All right, so we're getting our safety equipment back into place. And we'll be cutting our railing post. All right, so we're actually going to do a change of plan here. The weight of this post pre-cut is too much for our table here, so we're going to lower our saw. We've unplugged it, but we're just going to drop it down to the ground so that it's a little bit more stable of a surface for this, because we're going to have a little bit more friction running across it. All right. And then the other thing with this one is this wood is thicker than the height of our saw, so we're going to have to come at it at 2 angles to complete our cut. The other option is we could just finish it off with the handsaw as another option. Well, and we managed to split our board, but that's okay. It's split the way we would prefer it. So let's unplug the saw. So we ended up splitting just a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll get our handsaw and take the rest of that off. So while we're set up for this cut, we're going to go ahead and do our second post as well. Twice measured, and we'll just draw on our guideline. Safety glasses back on, ear protections in, gloves, no loose straps. So now we'll finish this cut. Okay, so that's it for the cuts. So we're just going to get positioned and measured for our holes next to start drilling for our rail lines.